What up?
Glad to be
Mr.
here.
Shaman, Jacob Chansley. I'm not supposed to talk to you. No one's supposed to talk to you. Remember, you're supposed to be a very dangerous man.
Yeah,
It's very
well,
scary.
can't believe everything the media says.
I was really excited when you said yes to an interview because there, I believe, is no more lied about man in the private sector than you. There's a lot of lies about people in the public sector, but people they've created an entire mythos about you. You're your own Marvel villain in this extended universe.
Or Marvel hero to some.
Exactly. And, it's been great getting to know you and booking this because you seem like a really sweet guy. And we've just been out in the wilderness learning shamanism. And I'm like, this guy's awesome, actually.
Thanks,
How could you
man.
make this person a villain? But they've done their best. And so maybe you could like begin by explaining what this last year has been like for you. And sort of like where you are now.
Like since I got released or like
Yeah.
leading up to it or
Yeah.
Okay. Well, while I was in prison, I had to kind of fight this stigma for like the first week or two that I was somehow a racist, white supremacist Trump supporter. But all it took was for, the people of color, minorities, blacks, Mexicans, Asians to talk to me for 5 minutes to realize this guy's not racist. This guy's nothing like what we thought he was going to be.
So wait, even the prisoners?
Yeah, in the prison,
The
yeah.
prisoners were like, no, they're lying.
Yeah, they're like,
Media's
"Dude,
lying."
there's no way. This. Yeah, I actually kind of developed the reputation for being a square because I wouldn't break any rules. I'm not gonna drink any of the hooch you made. No, I don't want any spice. No, I don't want any wax. No, I'm not going to, get any tattoos. I'm trying to go home. I don't want any, trouble. And I was also very like spiritual. So I was trying to help some of these prisoners, some of these inmates to see the fallacies in some of their thinking. I also taught a metaphysics class while I was in prison. So I was teaching them like the ways of, metaphysics, how it relates to shamanism and stuff like that, like in a class, classroom setting. So I was also all the while telling them everything that Tucker Carlson's footage was showing people, and nobody believed me that the police were, that I offered to help, that I was trying to help people
Yes.
to, help the cops to stop people from vandalizing or stealing or, whatever, and help them clear the building and stuff. And they didn't believe me. And then when they saw the footage on Tucker Carlson, the whole yard was just like, oh my God, people, even guards came up to me and they're like, so you're like innocent.
No way.
And I was like,
The
dude,
prison guards.
yeah. Because, it's not like they voted for Biden.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and then, they knew I was going to come to the yard before I did, the inmates and the guards. So they were kind of anticipating my arrival. And it's funny because I haven't disappointed. I'm nothing like they thought I was going to be. And so it's always intriguing. They want to get my input on things. So we found out Tucker Carlson said on Friday, we're going to be airing footage on January 6th on Monday. And so the guys in the prison told me, hey, this is what they're going to be doing. I was like, okay, well, let's check it out. So I was sitting there watching on the white TV, and Tucker Carlson starts talking about me and this footage. And then all of the TVs, black, white, Mexican, Asian, all of them switched over to Tucker, and they're all watching. And they're just like looking over at me like, you've got to be kidding. Like, he told us. You know what I mean? So the cognitive dissonance for them, you know what I mean? It was real. And then after that, like I said, yeah, inmates, guards were coming up to me. So like, you're really not supposed to be here.
So you can watch Tucker in prison.
I watched him occasionally.
Yeah.
What really kind of upset
I
me.
guess what I'm asking is there's a TV where you can freely
Yeah.
change the channel.
Yeah.
And people can watch based on what they wish to watch.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so sometimes like they'd be watching Tucker, and then halfway through Tucker, they'd switch it over to ABC World News. And I'm just like, how can you go from watching Tucker to watching Mockingbird crap, where they're, all this stuff that he's talking about on Tucker is like the antithesis of it is on ABC
Yes.
World News.
Yes.
They're telling you to take the vaccine, for God's sake, So after a while, I just stopped caring. But that episode of Tucker, everybody was like, oh, we're going to check it out. So after that, I had already had my release date. I got my release date in February. right? So when Tucker aired that footage 3 weeks later and everybody saw it and they were like, oh my gosh, and then I'm about to get released 3 weeks later, right? And I couldn't help but think of that biblical verse that I pulled up when I was first in my cell. I am yours, you are mine. I have redeemed you and called you by name, O Jacob. So like a lot of people believe that I was redeemed or vindicated in the court of public opinion by that footage. So God has a sense of humor, man, and God's plan is better than anything we can plan out ourselves. So 3 weeks before I'm released, there's enough of time of me being in prison for people to be still outraged about the fact that I'm in there. But then it was just enough time for before my release to kind of build some sort of a narrative of vindication when I did get released, so that I didn't have a bunch of people hating on me, but more so curious to hear what I had to say.
People finally saw through the lies with Tucker Carlson's footage release. And I think that we had always assumed that this was the case. But what it seemed like to us in our show, in our audience, is that they selected you. And they looked at the bison horns, and they looked at the face paint, and they looked at the tattoos, and they said, we're going to make this guy who looks a little out there, the poster boy.
Yeah, poster boy. Yep.
For the crazies who stormed the Capitol, because we got to make someone we got to get someone who doesn't look like Meemaw, who's waving her 25-cent flag from Walgreens. We got to get somebody who looks a little scary and who looks nuts. Forgive me.
No, it's quite all right.
Again, we just had an amazing shaman experience out in the desert, and I'm down. I'm down, bro. But when Tucker Carlson played the footage of you getting escorted past all these armed guards, all these guys with guns, all these people with shields, everyone who's supposed to stop you, right, because you're so dangerous, down to the well of the Senate, and then you saying a prayer and being peaceful and helping the cops and like thanking the cops, it just collapsed every lie that everyone had assumed was already being told about you. Mm-hmm. Perhaps and I know there's more to that moment than we could see even on Tucker's footage. Can you sort of break that down, right? So when people were watching that in the prison yard, what's the other side? What was untold by Tucker, right, about that experience?
Well, the guys on the yard, of course. I had already told him, but they wanted me to tell him again that, like, I told you, I volunteered to help the police. That's why they were escorting me around. Because I came up to them, I said, hey, there's people down there in the Senate. And if you want, I can go down there and help you guys, like make sure nobody steals anything, nobody vandalizes any property. I could even help you clear the building, clear the chamber if you want. And they're like, yeah, okay, please, come on.
Can I stop you?
Sure.
So how did you engage with police? So were there two cops like standing there in the Capitol and you just had this conversation with them?
Well, yeah, they were the ones that were standing there on like in that picture where I'm screaming freedom, and then the cop is like looking back like that. Yeah, it was him and like another dude, another cop.
So you just offered to help?
Yeah. I mean, dude, like ultimately I was there in DC as a shamanic practitioner because all of those millions of people on the ley lines, do you know what ley lines are? The electromagnetic ley lines that like pyramids and obelisks and temples and stuff are built on. You ever heard about that?
I know that DC is sort of a very Masonically laid out city.
Right. Well, the reason why is because the obelisks, the White House, the Capitol, the Lincoln Memorial, the Jefferson Memorial, they're all built on electromagnetic ley lines. So we have an electromagnetic field that goes around our planet, right? So that electromagnetic field that goes around our planet goes all the way down to the core of the planet. Right? So where it is that the lines, those electromagnetic lines cross on the surface, on the crust of the planet, that's where the pyramids and the obelisks and the ancient temples and stuff like that are built because they're absorbing that electromagnetic energy. And that's why they used to do like rituals and stuff there, like, worship and stuff there. In particular, a lot of these temples were like harmonic chambers for sound because sound affects the quantum realm. Sound affects the electromagnetic activity on the ley lines. And so all of the thoughts, all of the emotions, all of the rituals, all the ceremonies are getting plugged into these electromagnetic ley lines that are on the earth and around the earth. And then that ends up creating for different timelines that we can branch to based on when these rituals are done. You see, so like if you're doing it on a full moon, the electromagnetic activity of the whole planet is heightened on full moons. That's why the emergency rooms fill up. That's where we get this idea of lunatic and stuff like that, because it's affecting our thoughts and our emotions. So like full moons, new moons, star alignments, planetary alignments, solar cycles, all of that stuff all plays a role with these electromagnetic ley lines. And when these rituals or these ceremonies are done on these ley lines, you see, so think about it like this, and this is where it gets kind of like, whoa. All of these buildings in DC, as well as all of the state capitals all over the country, they're all built on ley lines. Okay. Now there's people in these buildings that are writing law, right? And what is law? Law is words or code, right? Now, what are those laws doing? They're telling us what we can buy, what we can sell, what is legal, what is illegal. Therefore, it's affecting our thoughts, it's affecting our emotions, and therefore affecting our behavior. Right? So through the code that is being written in these buildings on electromagnetic ley lines, they're affecting our electromagnetic field, our electromagnetic thoughts, our emotions. All of these things are built into the very fabric of reality itself. They're affecting our thoughts and our emotions and therefore our behavior through this code. And what they're actually doing, if you think about it, is because they are beholden to, like, for example, in the deep state in DC is beholden to corporations and banks and corporate interest and banking interest on an international scale. What they're doing is they're writing codes that favor the corporations or the banks, and therefore less than 1% of the population, not the people. So it's kind of like a computer virus. A computer virus can go in and mess up the algorithm, mess up the code of a computer, and divert all of the energy that's moving through the computer to less than 1% of the computer's circuitry, therefore slowing down the computer. So all of our time, all of our energy, all of our money, all of our work and effort is going to serve less than 1% of the population through this code. And meantime, we're debt slaves. The earth is being destroyed. Resources are being monopolized. Human beings are being trafficked. Yes. You see what I'm saying? So like the effects of this bad code are very real. So coming back to DC. So when I showed up on January 6th, my main intention was to ensure that as there's millions of people amassing on the ley lines, that it was the most peaceful, loving, high vibration thoughts and emotions being plugged into the grid system. So inside the Capitol, that was the main thing I was trying to do, regardless of what the media might have said or the government's narrative. My main intention was to ensure peace, ensure stability, or ensure like love and harmony inside of that sacred place, because it is a sacred place.
See, this is what I'm talking about. You're a sweetheart.
Oh, 100%, dude. Like,
you're a sweetheart. You wouldn't harm the hair on a...
Dude,
you wouldn't pluck a feather off a, I'm not exactly sure where those feathers came from, but like you wouldn't, like, you seem like a peaceful, harmonized, natural, nature-centered, spiritual kind person. You would never harm another person.
No, never. Dude, I catch and release flies in my house. I don't even kill them. I catch them and I put them outside. I catch and release spiders. If I see a bee drowning in a pool, I pick it out. You know what I mean? Yeah. Part of being a shamanic practitioner is having reverence and respect for all forms of life. It's the whole Gandhi thing, ahimsa. It's an ancient Hindu rule of do no harm.
I'm trying to figure out why in lots of footage of you on January 6th, there's not a single piece of footage, and there's dozens of hours from different angles, of you doing anything violent.
Because I wasn't violent.
Yet the DOJ says that you had to be forcibly removed from the Senate in their filing after Tucker Carlson released footage of you being a peaceful, kind, cooperative with police orders individual after being escorted into the Senate.
Well, I think what it is that it's because for them, when the police came in, like, in their riot shields and all that stuff, that was when I was like, all right, guys, come on, let's go. And I started using my bullhorn. God bless the men and women in blue. You guys were on your side. God bless you. Thank you for all you do and all that stuff. Trying to keep things, calm. And dude, there's other people in the Senate that are saying, God bless you. Thank you guys. We appreciate you, to the cops.
That's right.
You know what I mean? So The way, but this is what's interesting, and this is why I think it's really essential that we kind of discuss this, is that there the Mockingbird media has divided, and I say Mockingbird media because of Operation Mockingbird when the CIA infiltrated the media outlets. So they're not mainstream media. They're Mockingbird media. One of them says something, then the other one says something, and then they start using the same narrative and they go back and forth, and oftentimes they'll reference each other in their own articles. The New York Times said, MSNBC said, so they're Mockingbirds, right? So one side of the Mockingbird media, you have Fox News, Newsmax, and their narrative is January 6th was a mostly peaceful protest that, it was nonviolent, blah, 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 blah. And then and that's true. And then on the other side, there's the CNN, MSNBC. Oh, it was an insurrection. It's a day of violence. It was the worst day since 9/11. Give me a break. And yeah, there was violence on the outside of the building. But inside, no. So what both sides are doing is they're mixing truth and lies. And that's where you get information, which is truth, disinformation, which is lies. And when you move and bring them together, you get misinformation. And anybody that controls the misinformation narrative controls the minds of the people. So now you have people that watch Fox and Newsmax, and you have people that watch CNN and MSNBC butting heads. They're constantly, the Mockingbird media is dividing the country based on propaganda and what people choose to believe. So was there violence on that day? Yes. Is that terrible? Yes. Was it an insurrection? No. You want to see an insurrection? Look what happened in Afghanistan. That's an insurrection, okay? It was a riot, but if you think about this, there were literally over 1 million people in Washington, D.C. on January 6th. And so far, only 1,200 or so people have been arrested. Very, very slim, even less than that, of those people were violent and charged with violent crimes, right? So literally less than 0.01% of the people that were in Washington, D.C. on that day have been arrested for violent crimes. But the Mockingbird media is trying to paint it as it was a violent insurrection. Anybody that was there in D.C. on January 6th is an insurrectionist, blah, 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 blah. So there was violence on the outside of the building. There was very little to no violence on the inside. The only people that were harmed on the inside, as far as I know, was like Ashley Babbitt and like one other woman. I forgot her name. But that's it. On the outside, yes, lots of police were harmed. And I'm of the belief where I don't care if you're Antifa or BLM or a Trump supporter or whatever. If you're harming police officers, if you're damaging property, you should be prosecuted. But I also don't believe that it's right that the FBI is taking people off of terrorism cases, off of rape, child molestation, drug cartel cases and stuff like that, and then taking them off those cases and placing them on misdemeanor cases for January 6th.
Did you see any FBI agents or federal agents in the crowd?
No, I did not. But that's the point. They're not going to wear FBI hats.
Sure. Well, I guess what I'm saying is, did you suppose or assume that there was federal infiltration on January 6th?
Not at the time.
Yeah.
In all honesty, I had no idea what was going to happen. And if I could go back and stop it from happening, damn right I would. Of course. I tried to stop things before they got crazy.
Yeah.
I was telling people, leave the cops alone. Like the people that were at the barricades, they were kind of shaking the barricades and yelling at the cops. I was like, dude, leave them alone. We're law enforcement's friend. Like, what are you doing? Yeah. You know what I mean? And then what I think, this is just my opinion, what I think really did it, like when I look back on it, is when the cops threw like tear gas bombs and concussion grenades into the crowd. And that's when all hell broke loose.
Yeah. Yeah. You went into the Capitol and you offered to help the police officers. Then what happened?
Well, after we were out of the building, people came up to me and they had their phones. They're like, dude, you went viral. You're all over Twitter. So like by the time I got out of the building, I was already all over the world.
But when you were inside the Capitol, you weren't violent at all.
No.
What did they charge you with?
Quite the antithesis of it, actually. Well, I was charged with rioting, obstruction of an official proceeding, parading on Capitol grounds, trespassing, and all that other stuff. What I pled guilty to was the strongest of all the charges, which was the obstruction of an official proceeding.
So 5 months earlier, 6 months earlier, May 2020, there was an official proceeding at the White House that was obstructed when leftist rioters burned down buildings at the White House, burned down St. John's Church, attempted to kill Donald Trump, harmed 400 different officers or Secret Service agents, and all those charges were dropped.
Dropped.
Yeah.
Well, you know what's interesting is I've heard that from whistleblower FBI agents, that have talked on the undercurrent, the independent media, that when they were trying to investigate BLM and Antifa as an organization, as a terrorist organization, they were told from the higher ups that they were not allowed to.
Doesn't surprise me.
That they are basically exempt from investigation.
I mean, so you need foot soldiers, right, in your political movement, and I believe that the FBI is clearly, and the deep state is clearly aligned with a leftist progressivism, neo-Marxism, and you have to have the change agents in the street in order to facilitate that. It's strange. I mean, how powerful are these people that Mark Milley, who walked out after they cleared in front of the White House, I mean, they just tried to kill the president. I mean, that's real insurrection. By definition, insurrection is attempting to kill a president, a leader, attempting to hurt or harm. You're doing it in a violent manner. So they insurrected at the White House because they were trying to kill Donald Trump. I mean, they say it on camera. And they damn near succeeded. They took the president to a bunker, right? And Mark Milley had to, he apologized for like coming out against that.
Yeah.
He apologized.
Yeah.
The civilian leader of our military, like, apologizing.
Yeah, he's a dinosaur.
Yeah.
And I just, in all honesty, I don't understand how people like that even make it to general. It's, to me, evidence that there's a whole other agenda going on. These people tend to fail up.
Yeah.
They fail and then they get moved up. Like that Dick Levine, Rachel Levine.
Yeah.
His real name is Richard, so Dick Levine. And like,
plus he has a.
That's that. Hence the name. But like, in charge of like health and human services, I think it was in like Oregon or Washington or something. Terrible job. Did a terrible job. Yeah. And then now is an admiral. And the first female admiral. I mean, it's a circus. It's a clown show. Give me a break.
You were in the military.
I was.
Yeah. How long?
2 years.
And why did you sign up?
Because I wanted to serve God and country. But the funny thing is about the military is it's a whole lot more glamorous on the outside looking in than the inside looking out. And after a while, you kind of come to realize, like, there's some really dumb people in charge. How did you make it? And then the thing is, but here's on the other side, there's actually some really good people in the military, some awesome people, awesome leadership, really awesome people. And they make it better. They make it, they make all the difference.
Stephen Sund is out doing interviews with Tucker, saying that he called and called and called. No one picked up. Nobody tried to defend the Capitol. That there were feds everywhere. Feds were crawling, crawling everywhere was his own terminology. And at some point, it seems like you were set up, right? Like, it seems like this was an entrapment plot designed to flip a narrative, right? The same way that if Donald Trump had lowered the gates at the White House, it would have flipped the narrative forever. There would have been no defense, right? That they burned down the White House. This seems like an entrapment plot. And Tucker's footage of you, obviously, Tucker's report on all of this, it's not what we think. It's all been a lie in order to facilitate a narrative that has been very, very helpful to the progressive left. Do you see that as, do you agree with that? Do you agree that you were set up on January 6th?
Well, the thing is, nobody can make me do anything. That was my choice to go into that building. But the funny thing is God took their little plan and turned it on itself. You know what I mean? And because the thing is that it was like, where's Waldo? You know what I'm saying? Like I was Waldo, and it like and
Yes.
everybody was kind of tracking me, and because
Yes.
they made me the straw man for
Yes.
that day, the poster boy,
Yes.
and then they painted all of this narrative kind of around this shock and awe campaign that they used my image as like the backbone of. And then when that footage came out, it's like that whole thing just fell apart. And I find it very difficult to believe that the J6 committee, for example, didn't comb through all of the footage from that day to see what it is that I did so that they could find something damning. I find it very difficult to believe that they didn't see the cops escorting me around the building. You know what I mean? I find it very difficult to believe that they didn't look and see the situation and go, well, dang, we just have to use this picture. Right. And now we find out that Trump has subpoena power, and lo and behold, oh, all the J6 committee's evidence is it's gone. Why? You know, Mike, the question I keep coming back to is what would evidence of government corruption look like? What would it look like? Would it look like deleting 33,000 emails and no justice, no charges? Would it look like 10% for the big guy? Would it look like foreign proxy wars that act like money laundering machines? Would it look like foreign wars that place public money into private hands? Would it look like erasing or deleting a bunch of evidence that was collected and then was used to weaponize against the people or against Donald Trump? Now he can't use it for subpoena power. What would evidence of corruption look like? You know what I mean? Would it look like being able to shoot a sitting president in broad daylight on live television and then brushing it under the rug like what happened with JFK? How long has this been going on? I mean, JFK was talking about a tightly knit, highly efficient machine a long time ago. It combines military, diplomatic, scientific, economic, and political operations. He also said, "We are opposed by the world. We are opposed around the world by a monolithic and ruthless conspiracy that relies primarily on covert means for expanding its sphere of influence, on infiltration instead of invasions, on subversions instead of elections." On intimidation instead of free choice, on guerrillas by night instead of armies by day. Look what happened with Antifa and BLM. Guerrillas by night, no armies by day, right? So if we look at that speech and even just that little bit of dialogue, that little bit of the monologue, it's like very telling when we bring it to today and say, oh my gosh, like how long has this been going on? And how bad have things really gotten?
I would never say that, of course, somebody pushed you into the cat, right? Like nobody forced your hand there, but they can lower gates. Do you know what I mean?
Well, they
Like,
didn't lower the
like
gates. Not,
if there was 20,000 National Guard troops in front of the Capitol, you weren't getting into the Capitol, right? They could have prevented you from entering the Capitol and any human being from entering the Capitol. That is obviously within their power. I lived in Washington, D.C. for 15 years. And this is like
I'm sorry to hear that.
they can lock down. Well, not anymore, thank God. Not anymore. And I want to get to that. I want to get to how satanic the city has become because there's dark energy in that place. It needed a lot of shamanism in Washington. I suppose all I'm trying to say here is not necessarily that you are a victim of somebody like taking you and forcing you into something, but that you are a victim of the circumstances that allowed for the Capitol to be breached and opened up and not secured. And we know for a fact, this is like just a known fact, that Nancy Pelosi did not pick up the phone call for 80 minutes.
Right.
80 minutes when she could have instantly ordered the Capitol to be locked down. Nothing happened.
Yeah.
And those cops were left alone. Like 20 cops were left out there with hooliganism, obviously, that both you and I decry. Clearly, never ever hit a cop, never punch a cop, never fight a cop. But in a situation like that, clearly, like things go sideways, and it seems as though that you are a victim, and actually were a chosen figurehead, poster boy, because they needed somebody who looked a little scary.
Shocking.
Yes, a little scary for their narrative. Meemaw with the little American flag doesn't quite fit the narrative.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't see myself as a victim. I refuse that label. I see myself as a victor because what happened to me didn't destroy me. It just made me a stronger spirit. It just made me a stronger human being. I I believe that time is the currency of the universe. Your attention is your currency. And what you choose to do with your attention and what you choose to do with your time. So you can either invest it, you can either spend it, or you can waste it. So I chose to invest my time into self-development. I chose to invest it in becoming a better, stronger human being, a better, stronger man, invest it into making the world a better place, no matter where it was that I was at. Circumstances don't make the man. They simply reveal him to himself. Pictius. And Seneca said, it is not what you endure, but how you endure it that matters. And so for me, I'm not a victim. You're only a victim if you choose to be a victim. I am a victor. That I'm a winner, not a loser. You know what I'm saying? And no matter what the circumstances are, I'm going to win, baby. Because that's who I am. You know what I mean?
Kamala Harris said that this is like our like 9/11 and Pearl Harbor, September 11th, January.
You know what's funny about that though, is that they completely ignore the Weather Underground bombing the Capitol, which that was their side. Oh, and by the way, Bill Ayers, yeah, he got appointed. Not only did he get a pardon from Obama, but he got appointed to something like the Department of Education or something in the Obama White House.
That's right.
Also, there was I think it was in the 50s or the 60s, there was a bunch of Puerto Ricans that stormed the Capitol and shot Congress members. Mm-hmm. But these things don't get mentioned. Mm-hmm. These, to me, are terrible things. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Where's the history?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And like literally, like 3,000 people died on 9/11. Mm-hmm. Okay. And literally hundreds of thousands of people were affected, families, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And like literally hundreds, if not thousands of people have died of like cancer and stuff because of all the soot and all the crap from the buildings and stuff like that, asbestos and stuff that went into the air, you know? So what these people do, this is psychological warfare 101. They combined trigger words with trigger images, okay? And they use these trigger words and these trigger images together to craft a narrative that will create an emotional response in the subconscious portion of the brain, right? And if you can linguistics, language, program the neurons in the brain, in the subconscious portion of the brain, then you can end up affecting a person's conscious perception of reality. So trigger words and trigger images are used, combined together to create an emotional response that programs the subconscious portion of the brain so that they can then control how people see the world consciously. You see? So insurrection, violence, deadly, white supremacy, 9/11, terrorism. These are all trigger words. And if all they're doing is showing people in these chaotic fits of emotion on January 6th outside the building, or if they're showing an image of a dude in horns and face paint inside the building, and then they're combining all these trigger words with these trigger images, then the narrative can be crafted, especially when they throw in like the QAnon label, because the media literally was in like a year-long campaign of QAnon is this, white supremacist, terrorist, conspiracy theorist, all these things. So QAnon is a fiction created by the media. And then they label all these other things below it. You see what I'm saying? So I actually wanted to tell you something though. You were saying about how like DC's swamp is very low vibe, like the satanic influence is very real. So on December 12th, I went to the second Mega Million March, December 12th, 2020.
That's right.
And I did a shamanic chant all the way from behind the Capitol building, walking all the way down to the Lincoln Memorial. I had my drum, I was banging on my drum, and I was screaming freedom and screaming freedom the whole way. It was like a good hour of my walking from A to B, screaming freedom, banging my drum. And dude, it was echoing everywhere. It was just so loud. Everywhere.
That was such a good vibe, that march. I was there. That was amazing.
Yeah, well, and that's what I thought we were going to have with January 6th.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So anyway, I did it with the intention of clearing the ley lines, with the intention of clearing all that low frequency energy, breaking it up, because that's what the drumming and the singing and shamanism is about. It's about chasing off evil spirits. It's about breaking up evil vibes. It's about raising the frequency on the ley lines, right? That's why the Native Americans have medicine wheels on ley lines. That's why they do their healing on the ley lines. Anyway, so I did that. And then like a day or so later, I ended up like leaving DC. And similar to what I was saying out there with the smoke going up to God and how long it takes to get to God to answer the prayers and all that stuff, right? It took about 3 days, 4 days from the day that I did that to, I was all the way back in Phoenix. And by the time I had gotten back in Phoenix, I looked on my phone and the largest snowstorm in DC and Maryland's history and New York had hit the East Coast. Literally feet of snow.
You summoned the storm.
Well, and this is what I was trying to tell you about creating storms and cleansing ecosystems. It's about using the elements to cleanse negative energy and bring like a wash of positive energy to like wash it all away.
What kind of energy do you feel when you go to DC?
Well, the same kind of energy I felt when I was in Hollywood. Very low vibe. You can cut it with a knife. Very low frequency, like ugh. You know, it's sticky. It's like grimy, almost like tar or like slime. Like it reminds me of Ghostbusters 2 with the all that negative sludge that's everywhere. You know what I mean? That's kind of what it's like, and it's very real. If we had our third eyes open, if our pineal gland was open, we'd be able to see it.
Demonic.
Yes. Well, and that's what's really interesting about all of these Capitol buildings, about Washington, D.C., and even in places like the London Palace and the Vatican. Okay. If we look at these areas and the electromagnetic ley lines that they're built on, and we look at each of these buildings like they have a satanic pentagram on them, right? And the satanic pentagram is sucking energy in to it. Then you imagine all of these capitals all over the country, in DC, in the Vatican, in the London Palace, et cetera, et cetera. All of these areas are sucking energy in. They're not bringing the vibe up. They're bringing everything down. The code is feeding, the bad code is feeding into like this unholy force and making it stronger on the planet. And meanwhile, we've got ecocide, the destruction of whole ecosystems. We've got mass extinctions, the whole species going extinct. We've got genocide, whole groups, whole nations of people being massacred. We've got famine everywhere. We've got war. We've got disease. We've got predation, exploitation, human and child trafficking. These are the effects of the bad code. Because think about it, if the FBI was doing their job, would we have human and child trafficking rings? Would we have massive amounts of fentanyl coming over the border?
They could shut it down tomorrow. If they decide, they could flip a switch.
Yes, they could flip the switch. So the government could end human and child trafficking. They could end things like fentanyl trafficking if they wanted to. If they wanted to. Why don't they?
If Nancy Pelosi was sitting here in this chair, what would you tell her?
Retire. Please retire.
But personally about January 6th, what would you tell her? Based on all the available evidence that we know now.
You know,
based on your experience.
I'll say this much. A wise man holds his tongue, knowing silence speaks for him. I have nothing to say to that woman, except one word. Retire.
You still support Donald Trump?
Yeah. I mean,
there's a hesitation there. Talk
well,
to me.
I mean, the thing is, dude, is that like, well, first of all, I definitely don't support DeSantis or Vivek or Chris Christie or Mike Pence. You know what I mean? Like all those people are clowns, you know? And I God love him. I support what some of the things that RFK has said about the vaccines, but he also was one of these climate change ban assault weapons types. You know what I'm saying? So Trump is the only one that I've seen that is actually, if I were president, he did a lot of the things that I would do. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that far outweighs some of the things with him that I don't agree with. You know, he made some appointments that I don't agree with. He made a couple of moves that I just, you know, he said a couple of things where I'm like, man, come on. Like if you just didn't do that, you'd have more supporters. But I get it. He's himself. That's what I love about him, is that he's not some showing people some face. He's genuine. He's not the Mike Pences or the Mitt Romneys or the Ron DeSantises of the world. But at the same time, I don't think anybody running for president is saying what needs to be said at all. Nobody's explaining how we got here. Nobody's thinking like centuries ahead. Everybody's just, oh, the next election, no. You see, in the Native American tradition, they have this thing where like they say, okay, whenever they get at a crossroads, they say, how will our decision now affect 7 generations from now? How will what we do here and now affect our children's 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 children? How will that happen? What will happen? And we're not doing that. We're not thinking centuries ahead. If we did, we wouldn't be creating anthropogenic chemicals that bioaccumulate in the ecosystem and kill the microbiological life of the soil and the water, making it ecosystems completely unlivable, making farmland totally toxic so we can't, grow food. Things like East Palestine, Ohio, would have been taken care of a long time ago if we were thinking about the 7th generation.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? The fluoride in the water would have been taken care of a long time ago if we'd be thinking about the 7th generation. Glyphosate and GMOs would have been taken care of a long time ago if we were thinking about the 7th generation. But, or let alone stratospheric aerosol injections or chemtrails. All of these things, vaccines, all of this stuff, the way that it's affecting our birth rate and our reproductive organs, like where are we gonna be 7 generations from now? And none of these people running for president are talking about that. Another thing, God love him. I love Trump. The fact that he declassified these 3 patents I'm about to disclose to you is phenomenal. 0-point energy engine. It extracts energy from the vacuum of space. A room temperature superconductor that allows the 0-point energy engine to function without overheating, thusly giving us free, infinite energy, okay? Without a need for coal, oil, nuclear, whatever. This one engine takes care of everything, okay? And then lastly, the last patent is what's called a TR-3B. It's a triangular shaped craft that uses what's called inertia propulsion or anti-gravity to fly through the sky. And we're talking from LA to New York, snap of a finger. Okay, that's the speed that we're talking because there's no G-force. Okay, he declassified these 3 patents. You can look it up. Salvador Payas is the person that applied for the patents, and these patents were declassified. We've had them for decades. Okay, so Donald Trump declassifies them, but he's not talking about it. Why is he not talking about it? Like, this changes everything. And this could actually get the environmentalists on his side. And also, none of the candidates are talking about Tesla Tower technology. Tesla came up with an infinite free, clean, wireless energy device over 100 years ago. And JP Morgan, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, all these people that are currently in charge of the system that we have now were the ones that stopped it from going public. We're the ones that sabotaged Nikola Tesla's work. And here's the cool part. If we start using Tesla Tower technology, we will create a decentralized energy grid. What are the globalists trying to do? Centralize our energy grid, okay? It would also create a decentralized communication grid because you can actually use these towers to use the Earth to communicate all over the planet. So there's no need for satellites, cell phone towers, Wi-Fi, all that goes out the window. So what are they also trying to do with the Ericsson report? You familiar with the Ericsson report? Ericsson, the corporation Ericsson that controls it's a global telecommunications company that controls all of the communications on the planet. Okay. They've centralized our communication grid. So Tesla Tower technology gives us a decentralized communication grid. In warfare, the number one thing you want to do is corrupt communication lines, or at least co-opt them so that you can know what everybody's saying, what your enemy is doing, where the supplies are going, where the troops are moving, all that stuff. And you never want your enemy to know that their communication line is compromised. You see, so the fact that we have a centralized communication grid, you need to look into the Ericsson report. Okay, Ericsson is I believe it's a Wallenberg corporation out of Sweden, and because they are not based in the United States, they are not beholden to the Constitution. Okay. Tesla Tower technology will also give us renewed forms of agriculture. You can actually use these frequencies that would be coming from the towers to stimulate the growth of plants, keep out pests so we don't need pesticide. You could also use it symbiotically with things like what are called bioremediating fungus that eat toxic chemicals and convert them into organic material. So things like East Palestine, Ohio, psh, done, taken care of. No problem. The fungus will eat it. It'll all go back to good. As long as you use these frequencies and the fungus together, the fungus will grow exponentially and just eat all this stuff up. Okay. You can also use it to purify water supplies. Okay. You can also use Tesla Tower technology and the electromagnetic ley lines that they're built on as a form of like electromagnetic highways. So we don't need to build roads and the stuff that the chemicals that are in the roads, all that stuff is in our water. A lot of it's in our food. A lot of it's in our air. And in some cases, even in most people's bloodstreams.
As I talk to you, I am amazed that you're not a leftist because so much of what you're saying is environmentalist and is spiritual in nature, is in harmonious with the earth. And I'm amazed that Democrats don't see you as an ally. Instead, they see you as an enemy. I'm interested about how did you get to where you are politically, because you harmonize all of these, your worldview with politics that I assume to be far more freedom leaning, conservative leaning, Republican leaning. Maybe I'm wrong. Where do you fit politically on a landscape?
Well, I consider myself like a constitutionalist or a libertarian.
Yeah.
I think the Republicans are thoroughly corrupt at this point, just like the Democrats. If you look into the Franklin cover-up and Lawrence King and the way that children were being trafficked to Nebraska and forced into satanic rituals and abused and molested, and Lawrence King was a Republican. Okay, I mean the Iran-Contras, that stuff happened in during Reagan's administration, right? George W. Bush was a Republican. Okay. H.W. a Republican.
Yeah.
Okay. Nixon a Republican. But I mean, Barney Frank is a Democrat. And you heard about the Barney Frank scandal where he was trafficking children, or his lover was trafficking children out of an apartment in New York. Then there's also, I mean, look at Clinton and Epstein, Obama. Look at all the drone strikes with Obama. I mean, the man got a Nobel Peace Prize and he's killed more people with a drone than any president in history. So for me, I'm about objective reality. What is the objective reality? The objective reality is Republicans and Democrats are both corrupt. And whenever they lose an election, either one, they all scream and cry and whine, election fraud, election rigging, we didn't lose, it was stolen. So that means, guess what? Our elections have been corrupt for a long, long time. Okay. It's a selection process, not an election process. Now, when it comes to this idea of the environment, the reason why I have the stance that I do is because these environmentalist groups have been co-opted by the very globalist corporations that are destroying the environment. And so that's why they're putting out this myth of carbon emissions, because then it will allow them to centralize the energy grid. It'll allow them to centralize and control our energy consumption, right? But these environmentalist groups are trusting the very corporations that are causing all of this ecocide and all these mass extinctions through the chemicals that they produce, which they're called anthropogenic chemicals or man-made chemicals, okay? And these anthropogenic chemicals do something called bioaccumulation in the environment because they don't biodegrade for thousands, if not tens of thousands of years. The layman term is forever chemicals. Okay, so these forever chemicals of a plethora of different kinds are making their way into the water and into the soil and into the air, and they're just killing all the microbiological life everywhere. Okay, now that microbiological life is the basis for all macrobiological life, for all ecosystems. Without that microbiological life, plants don't grow. You see what I'm saying? And we need plants to eat. You see what I'm saying? Without the microbiological life in the water, water isn't purified, so we can't drink it. Okay, so these environmentalists are trusting these same corporations that are producing all these chemicals and destroying the environments to somehow save them from carbon emissions. When the thing is, these same corporations have been hiding this very real solution, Tesla Tower technology, for over 100 years that would set everybody free, that would allow us to clean up the environment, that would change everything. And that's why we don't know about it.
You seem like a bigger environmentalist than most environmentalists.
Well,
Like you
because I,
seem you
yeah,
actually
I
care.
practice. Yeah,
You actually
I
care.
actually care about
Yeah.
the environment. I'm shamanism, bro. We're one with the environment. We the bugs, the bees, the birds, the trees. They're all our friends, man. And I'm gonna tell you something. If I come out of the forest to start becoming a spiritual activist, there's a pretty darn good reason. Okay. And I have come out of the forest. I was doing my own thing for quite some time, walking the shamanic spiritual path. And then the government and COVID came knocking on my door, telling me I'm not essential. I have to stay inside. You know, lying every single day in the Mockingbird media. Uh, the CDC and the WHO telling me how to live my life. You know, the the collapse of the banks, the currency, and like it's like the riots in the streets. Eventually, it's like, okay, you know what, y'all are pissing me off, and now you're coming to my door with it.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, okay,
It's the meme. Who radicalized you? You did.
right.
You did.
But the thing is I'm not a radical.
Right.
I'm a rational.
Right.
I'm being rational.
Yeah.
If we don't do something now, what will happen 7 generations from now? Where will our children's children be? Where will they be? They will not live in a world where food is abundant, where clean water is abundant, where they're living in a country that's free. So, this is why I advocate so much for Tesla Tower technology. It's also why I advocate for Dr. Rife. That's R-I-F-E, Royal Raymond Rife. He was working with Tesla on using frequencies to help heal the body and to rid the body of disease. So similar to how you can destroy a wine glass with sound and frequency, you can destroy cancer cells or viruses or bacteria or parasites with sound and frequency. And so if you look into the story of Tesla and Dr. Rife, and you look into the inventions that they created, you're going to find 3 things. Number 1, you're going to find corruption at its inception here in the United States. The people that did it and how it is that they suppress these inventions because they're trying to monopolize all of our resources and all of our labor. Okay. Number 2, you're going to find out all of the wonderful things that these technologies that were suppressed could do for humanity and how they could set us free. And number 3, in order to understand how this technology works, you have to understand energy, frequency, and vibration. And Nikola Tesla said, if you want to understand the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. So the most important part of understanding these men's stories and their technologies is that there's a spiritual element to it. Because as you look into these things and as you understand these technologies, the secrets of the universe unfold before you. Right? Now, the deep state. This is something I covered with Knowles, and I think and this is part of the reason why I'm somewhat upset with everybody that's running for president, because everybody's, oh, we're going to get rid of the deep state. We're going to get rid of the deep state. Oh, the deep state this, the deep state that. It's like, okay, well, what is the deep state then?
Right.
Because at this point, it's just a boogeyman. At this point, oh, I'm going to save you from the boogeyman. Just give me your money. Give me your vote. I'm going to save you from the boogeyman. So I can explain what the deep state is quite quickly. And this is why I question the legitimacy of these people as candidates. Not so much Trump, but a lot of the others. The deep state is the bureaucracy. So the founders split up all 3 branches of government because they believed that real tyranny was when all 3 branches of government were combined into a centralized power. Legislative, executive, and judicial, all owned and controlled by the same force, the crown, right? Okay, so they created a government that divided these 3 into checks and balances, separation of powers, blah, 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 blah. So the founder's definition of tyranny is a centralization of all 3. So the bureaucracy, number 1, has these bureaucratic agencies have the power to quote unquote regulate commerce. So they write regulations for which we have to obey. Okay, and in a sense, they're writing law. Okay. Number 2, they have a law enforcement apparatus within each of these bureaucratic agencies that enforces these regulations, that is unbeholden to any other form of the federal government or any federal law. They are underneath the bureaucratic agency. And number 3, they have administrative courts that are completely outside of the federal system and entirely enforcing and adjudicating the regulations that the bureaucracy is pushing. Okay? That's tyranny because you have all three forms of government, all three branches of government consolidated into a centralized power, a bureaucratic power. Now, here's the other thing. If these corporations are working in tandem with the regulatory agencies that are supposed to be regulating the corporations, then the corporations are actually the ones writing the regulations.
Yes.
Okay? So that means that the corporations are the ones controlling the government. And what the corporations are doing is they're using the government's monopoly on the initiation of force to reinforce their own monopolies over our resources and our labor to get rid of competition. That's not capitalism, that's fascism. Because fascism is the blending between corporate interest and government enforcement. Okay? So that being said, the deep state is these corporations and the big banks working and colluding with bureaucratic agencies to enforce this oligarchic fascism that we're dealing with right now. Okay? Now, if you think about it, if these corporations and the politicians that are working with them or the bureaucrats that are working with them are breaking the Constitution in doing this, then in a sense they're breaking the law, right? So if the people writing law and enforcing the law are the most frequent law breakers, then we kind of have criminals writing and enforcing laws that are for themselves and only themselves and subjugating everybody. In that sense, we're not even living in a fascism or an oligarchy. We're living in a weird, strange form of anarchy because there is no real rule of law and order because there's a two-tier system. These people over here can break all the laws they want. And if you try to expose them, then they use all these apparatuses to go after you. That's weird. That's like I said, it's anarchy because there's no real law and order, you know? So how do we fix it? How we fix it is you have the legislative branch. They use something called statutory construction, the way that they construct the statute, the way that they write the law. You could either say the government must or should, or the must or has to do something, or they should or can do something. Those two the differentiation there is very essential to understand because have to and must means that it's very restrictive of the government. Can and should is very open-ended. So when they write this thing when they write a statute in a certain way, they can leave it open-ended for the bureaucracy to come in and do whatever they want. You see? So the legislative branch created each of these bureaucratic agencies and is funding them through the power of the purse. You see? So if we learned anything from Donald Trump's first administration, it's that getting one of our guys in the White House for 4 years isn't enough. It's a fourth of the problem. What we need is people that have brass balls like Trump in the Congress, people that understand the problem in the Congress and have the courage enough to say, no, we are going to consolidate these bureaucratic agencies. We're not going to have 500, which we do. We have over 500 bureaucratic agencies in the Fed. We're not going to be beholden to the banks. We're not going to be beholden to the corporations. We're going to be beholden to the people. And we're going to move these funds. We're going to consolidate these agencies into a more tightly knit and highly efficient agency that isn't going to do the bidding of these corporations, but is going to be doing the bidding of the people. And if you don't go along with that, we're going to take your funding. We're going to dismantle this bureaucracy. Now, one of the other things that's really important to understand is that the courts also are kind of important as well, because the courts can basically, through like case law and stuff like that, they can influence how this stuff goes. You see? And this is the final point I'll make about the deep state. If the president is able to appoint people like Fauci, which Fauci was appointed by Reagan, okay? If the federal agencies are filled with people appointed by the president, and you corrupt the president, and then you've corrupted the Senate and the House, because these appointed people have to go through the Senate and the House to become verified in their bureaucratic roles, then you corrupt president after president after president and Congress after Congress after Congress. Then you can begin to appoint all of these people to the heads of these agencies that are a part of this much larger corrupt apparatus. And these people at the heads of these agencies stay in power for far longer than the elected officials that appointed them.
Yes.
You see? And so then from the top down of these bureaucratic agencies, they can start placing people in these lower positions that serve them in their agenda. And then they stay in power for far longer. So from the top down, all this stuff can be corrupted. And then the corruption grows exponentially in the bureaucracy. And then the bureaucracy ends up controlling the presidency and the Congress because they're the ones that have the intel. They're the ones that have the power to investigate, et cetera, or not investigate. You see?
The ghost in the machine.
Yes, yes. And it is a soulless machine. And it eats people alive.
Are you ever going to run for office?
I hope not. I don't like politics. I'm a spiritual activist, not a political one. And the thing is that if I can explain this to people, and this is what the shaman does, by the way, the shaman looks at reality and sees it objectively and then comes to the tribe and says, hey, just letting y'all know, y'all got this wrong. You know, this is actually the way reality is. That's part of like why I do the makeup and the face paint. It's a form of Hioka shamanism. And it's like the Hioka dresses in strange ways that is shocking to the cognitive system. If somebody says hello to the Hioka, they say goodbye. Somebody says goodbye, they say hello, because it's a matter of changing and shifting the perspective. And then the Hioka shaman can then delineate the way that people's cultural perception of reality is flawed and give them a new view. So, I mean, dude, do you really think that
people love to vote for political prisoners.
Well,
You're
I
a
know,
political prisoner.
I know, but like
People love the Nelson Mandela story.
oh, right. And look, the only way I would ever do it is if there was such a demand for it. Is if people are like, dude, I'll pay the $100,000 for you to run for president. I will make sure in my state that we collect all these signatures. They don't make it easy on purpose. You know what I mean? And I don't, honestly, I really don't want to do all that paperwork. It sounds terrible. What I'd rather do is hold everybody that's running accountable, because if they can't say it and explain it as simply as I have, then that contrasts their legitimacy. Then they're not really there for you. They're not the American people's people. They're not the American people's representative. They're the representative of something else that is clearly, I don't want to say nefarious, but it certainly isn't legitimate. And if it's not legitimate, then what are you doing? Why do you want to be president? Who wants to be president? You know what I'm saying? Like, Washington didn't want to be president. The only reason why he was president was because everybody was like, no, dude, we need you to be president. And that would be the only thing that would cause me to run for office. It was like, no, dude, we need you. We really need you to run. And then I'd be like, fine. You know?
You have a lot of support.
I hope so.
Yeah, yeah. Have you seen some of the memes?
I have. Some of them are delightful. I think my favorite one is I don't always go into the Capitol, but when I do, 7 cops open the door for me or something like that. You know, the most interesting man in the world.
Yeah. You like the memes.
Oh, yeah. Some of them are hilarious. Some people made some hilarious memes after what Alex Jones did on his show, like where they put like me in like a wizard garb and like a big old beard, and you know, somebody photoshopped me onto Conan the Barbarian and stuff. Oh, it's hilarious stuff. I try to have a sense of humor about it.
You get any ladies slide into your DMs?
Yeah, but none that have like really turned my head. And I have very strict standards. They have to impress me. They have to impress me, and that's hard. You know, I want them to stimulate my mind. You know, looks is important. It's very important. But if I'm not attracted to her heart, if I'm not attracted to her mind, next.
You're single.
Yes. And of course, you know, I mean, I like strong females. Not like, you know, like bodybuilder strong, but I mean like, you know, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, independent. You know, I like a woman that thinks for herself, has her own opinions, has her own beliefs, doesn't just go with whatever I think. I want her to be able to stimulate my mind. I want her to be able to get me thinking. You know what I mean? I want to be attracted to not just her body, but to her mind, to her heart, her soul. That's what I'm waiting for.
Do you think that woman's out there?
Oh, I know she is. I can feel her in the
Really?
ether. Oh yeah.
You're on a timeline trying to find her.
Well,
Or are you gonna find each other?
yeah, I'm on the timeline where we find each other. At least I'd like to think so.
Yeah.
I'd like to hope so. I've been single for a long time, over 5 years.
You're a popular guy. There's photos of you everywhere. You have your shirt off. You've been working out. Come on, man. You're a catch.
But my priority is saving the world,
Yeah.
saving humanity, not getting laid. Because if that becomes your priority, bro, you're gonna end up messing up somewhere. You know what I mean? My mission is one from God, and you don't screw that up.
Yes.
You don't. And I've been so blessed. I don't want to lose God's blessing over getting laid. You know, and I don't want to sacrifice the freedoms and the security of the seventh generation so I can, you know, get laid. No, that's so wrong.
You want children someday?
Of course. I want a lot of kids, actually. You know, I want a lot of kids.
Mrs. Shaman, mini Shaman.
Yeah, dude, that'd be cool. You know, I'm all for it as long as it's something that happens organically, something that God arranges.
Yes.
Because in my experience, man, like God's plan beats my plan every time. And it doesn't matter. Like I could be like, oh, this is what I want to do. God's like, no, this is what I need you to do. Whatever. And then at the end of I do whatever God needs me to do, it's like I get what I wanted and then some. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, all right. You know, I'll keep it in my pants until you tell me to. You know what I mean?
Don't incite an erection. That's what they always, what they
Chuck
always
Schumer.
say. Incited an erection. They all say.
If they believe Donald John Trump incited the insurrection against the United States.
Okay, so no woman has slid into your DM and incited an erection.
No.
Not yet.
There have been some that have tried to, you know, incite an erection in the shaman.
Thirst trap.
Yeah.
Yeah. Final question. I think this is important for all people. You went through some shit, man. You went through some shit. You don't have to say it, but I believe that you were entrapped. I believe that you were that what happened to you was deeply and abidingly wrong. You handled it like a champ. You're on the outside now. You seem super spiritually in tune and peaceful. You're like a very peaceful person. And people are going to watch this and go, man, I haven't gone through stuff like that, but I'm going through some bad stuff right now. How did you get through the struggle of the last few years? What is it that centered you? What advice can you give to people that are struggling right now?
You can't have a testimony without going through a test. And if God can't trust you with the little things, then why would God trust you with the big things? So every little test that you go through is a test to move you towards something bigger and better. The real trick is that a lot of people fail those little tests. So I would say that faith is essential. Like Christ said, you know, lay not your treasure where moth and rust doth corrupt. And think of the birds of the air. They do not reap, they do not sow, and yet our Heavenly Father feeds them. Will He not all the more feed you? Are you not more important than they? Gandhi said, God gives us just enough light to see the next step in front of us. But in our ignorance, in our arrogance, we want to see 10 steps ahead, and we look up and we feel lost in the dark when all we have to do is just focus on that next step. And that's what got me out of it. Was my thinking was, okay, how can I make a positive difference or a positive impact today? I'm not going to worry about what's happening later on. You know, and that's one of the things that prison teaches you is to be patient because you have no control. You know, and if if the government's in control, you better believe it's going to move really freaking slow. You know what I mean? So you got to be patient. So focus on the next step. Just don't worry about tomorrow. Tomorrow will worry for itself. Focus on this next step. And the best part is that it's right there in front of you. You can do something with now. You can't do something with tomorrow. You can't do something with yesterday. You can do something with now. So my thinking is create as many positive impacts that you can. Hold the door for people. Give food to a homeless person. You know, compliment somebody's shirt.
I love your shirt.
You know, thanks. Yeah, you know, it's it's my main.
It's iconic, man. It's iconic.
It's my main. Yeah. So
I'm glad we went through the tattoos.
Yeah,
because
me too.
I love it.
So yeah, a lot of people invest their time online making their like video game avatar, the ultimate avatar, you know, in like World of Warcraft or like, you know, Assassin's Creed or something. You know, they devote hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours into this, thousands of hours. And it's like, dude, why don't you work on this avatar? Why don't you work on this like character? Turn yourself into something legendary, bro. Like you can do it. You can freaking do it. It's going to take work, but guess what, bro? Nothing that's worth anything in life is going to be easy. And, you know, I love this. There's a meme of Christ, and he says, I never said it was going to be easy. I just said it was going to be worth it. So go through it, bro. No test without a testimony. Keep the faith and believe in yourself. Because never underestimate your power to change the world. That right there. The globalists, these less than 1%ers, the bureaucracy, they want everybody to feel insignificant and small. They want everybody to believe, oh, it doesn't matter what I do. Well, you vote with your money every day. Look at what happened to Bud Light. Look at what happened to Target. Okay? Why is it that people are still voting for Monsanto with their money? Why are they still buying all these Monsanto subsidiaries? They're literally poisoning your kids. They're literally destroying ecosystems, making them unlivable for several generations. Why are you still voting for them? That's why I eat organic, bro. Because not only did these pesticides cause cancer, not only do they end up making you stupid, and when they do, they make you stupid, okay? But they also are having all these negative effects on the entire world. So you're voting for that. Vote with your money every day. Vote with your attention. Your attention is your currency. Where are you devoting your attention? To Twitter? Are you devoting your attention to Facebook? Are you devoting your attention to CNN or Fox News? That's why they want everybody to watch. That's your attention, because that's where they make their money. They're mining your attention. They're mining your data. You see what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
They're getting money because you're on their platform or watching their platform, and then while your attention is devoted on their platform, they're advertising and getting you to buy a bunch of crap. You know, working jobs we hate so we can buy crap we don't need.
Fight Club.
I was going to say the S word, but yes, I love that movie.
Tyler Durden.
Tyler Durden.
Yeah.
You know, we're the middle children of history, man. No purpose or place. No great war, no great depression. Our great war is a spiritual war. Our great depression is our lives. We've all been raised on television to believe that one day we'll be millionaires and movie gods and rock stars, but we won't. And we're slowly learning that fact. And we're very, very pissed off.
All singing, all dancing crap of the world.
Yeah, but see, there's things about that I really don't like, because I don't think that we're the all singing, all dancing crap of the world. I don't like that. That's a very like nihilistic, anarchistic view.
We can do a whole nother podcast on the Tyler Durden political progeny.
Yeah,
that has been
it's
created.
Well, and you know, we have
whether that's good or not.
Well,
you know,
yeah, but
like,
we've been boxed in by corporations. We've been turned into consumers of trash. To quote Terrence McKenna, you know, we have to get our hands out of the social architects and engineers that want to turn us into a half-baked moron consuming all this trash that's being manufactured out of the bones of a dying world. And that's what's going on, is we're converting nature. We're taking the beauty of nature and all this, the God's creation, and we're converting it into something else that we throw away when we're done with it. And then it pollutes the environment. You know what I mean? We're turning a beautiful tree into a back scratcher and then throwing it away a week later. It was doing just fine on its own. You know what I mean? Rub your back against a wall, or maybe go up to a tree and rub your back against a tree. There's your back scratcher. You don't have to cut it down and turn it into something. You know what I mean? So because I view the root of all evil as investing one's heart and mind in the illusion of separation, I am therefore trying to create a spiritual evolution in humanity, where we recognize the fact, the reality that we're all unified, that we're all one. And what we do to another, we do to ourselves. What we do to nature, we do to ourselves. And it not just to ourselves, but to the seventh generation. So we have a choice. I've seen the future, and we have a choice between two timelines. One timeline is where we allow these globalists to take control of all the resources and all the labor of our lives and the lives of our children. And what ends up happening is we are living in a world where we are largely synthetic humans based on cloning and geoengineering, based on like AI, artificial intelligence, like a hive mind type system. Like we're all like Borg cyborgs. We're fusing with computers and biology, based on, like I said, genetic engineering and cloning. And we consume all the resources. The pollution just grows exponentially, and it destroys the world. And we're, a couple million people at the most are living on a radioactive rock. And we don't really have a seventh generation. We go extinct. That's one timeline. The other timeline is that we spiritually ascend. And we become we realize that we are these organic divine beings. We spiritually ascend into these higher frequencies of thought and emotion, higher frequencies of God, like God consciousness, where we're all one with our creator. We're all one with nature. We have a symbiotic relationship with nature. Our civilization, as our civilization thrives, so too does nature. We turn Earth into a beautiful green garden paradise. There is no war. There is no famine. There is no chaos. There is no disease. None of that stuff. And we become the space-faring species that we were born to be. We start colonizing places like the moon and Mars and stuff like that. And we really start evolving, not just spiritually, but technologically. And we don't use these technological advances for war and domination, but rather for peace and liberation.
Yes, enlightenment.
Enlightenment.
Yeah.
And that right there, that's the reality I'm working toward, is that enlightenment reality. And I will give my blood, sweat, and tears to make sure it happens. And I've been doing so for over 10 years.
This has been an enlightening conversation. Jacob Chansley. This is so awesome, man. Amazing. Amazing. Let's do this let's do this again later down the road and do just pure Tyler Durden talk.
All right,
We'll
down.
do like the deep dive philosophy of like, what did Tyler Durden teach an entire generation of young men? And is it good or bad?
I'm all for it.
Yeah. My man. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, brother.